Hello students, today we'll be looking at the topic inflation. We are going to define the term inflation and we are going to examine the types and causes of inflation. Let's begin. So what is inflation? Inflation is a steady and continuous rise in the general price level in the economy. So it's not just for one item, but all items, everything within the economy is seeing an increase, a steady increase in prices. Now, inflation is measured by a rise in what is called the retail price index from year to year, or the consumer price index. The retail price index is computed by measuring changes in prices of a given basket of goods that a consumer buys. So, the government will put together what is called a consumer basket, the things that consumers purchase on a regular basis, and they are given a weighting, and they will look at the changes in prices of that given basket from year to year. Now, what are the types of inflation? You have demand pull inflation, cost push inflation, liquidity or increase in money supply, and imported inflation. Now let's look at demand pull inflation. This is an increase in the demand in the economy. Now the total demand in an economy is termed aggregate demand, AD for short. It comprises of the demand of all the groups, households or consumers, firms, government, and the export sector. So the aggregate demand, AD, is equal to C plus I plus G plus X minus M. When aggregate demand increases, the supply of goods cannot meet that immediate demand, and as a result, prices will go up. Now let's look at the diagram. Now, the general price level is determined by the intersection, or at the intersection where aggregate demand is equal to aggregate supply. So at our original aggregate demand and supply curve, price is at P. When there is an increase in aggregate demand, the aggregate demand curve is going to shift from AD to AD1, while aggregate supply is being held constant, and you will see that at the corresponding price level that there is an increase in prices. Now let's look at cost push inflation. This is caused by an increase in the prices of the factors of production, that is land, labor, and capital. This will cause the firm's cost to rise. If any of the payments to these factors of production increases, the cost of production will increase. And in most cases, firms will increase their prices in order to maintain their profit levels. Let's look at the diagram. In this situation now, our aggregate demand curve is held constant, and our original aggregate supply curve, when it intersects with the aggregate demand curve, is equal to P. When there is an increase to the payments of the factors of production, production costs will go up. It will cause the firms to supply less to the market due to increased prices, and so aggregate supply will shift inwards or shift to the left at aggregate supply curve AS1. And at that intersection, you will see that the general price level increase to P1. So let's look at a little illustration. So you have the total revenue of OJ's Orange Juice Company's $20,000 per month from selling 400 cases of orange juice at $50 per case. Now it costs OJ's $12,000 to produce the 400 cases. So the cost per case here is 12,000 divided by 40, you'll get 30. Good. So the profit is your total revenue, which is a 20,000 minus total cost of 12,000. That will give you a profit of $8,000. Now, if producing the same 400 cases increases from $12,000 to $14,000 due to an increase in the price of oranges, that means the cost of producing is moving from $30 to $35. OJs must increase the price of the orange juice to $55 per case to maintain its total revenue, right? To maintain its profit. And so they will earn a total revenue of $22,000 to maintain profit of $8,000 per 400 cases. Now, one of the main forms of cost push inflation is the increase in wages, which is a payment to labor. When the labor costs rise faster than productivity, it is inflationary. So what you'll find is that the increase in wages fuel an increase in prices, which in turn cause labor to demand higher wages. So they want more wages. Firms will increase their price in order to pay their workers, and they know. So what you'll find is that their employees are demanding higher wages. Higher wages mean that the firm will increase their price levels, and employees faced with increased prices start to demand higher wages, and in order to meet higher wages, firms again will increase their price levels further in order to meet that demand. And so you'll find that this spiral keep taking place as a result of an increase in demand for wages. Now let's look at increase in money supply or liquidity. Now, an increase in money supply will cause an increase in demand, meaning once consumers or households have more money to spend, they are going to demand more goods and services. Just as in demand pull inflation, this will increase aggregate demand, and again, output remain constant, and it's going to cause an increase in prices. So this is a situation in the economy that is termed by this phrase where there is too much money chasing too few goods. Let's look at imported inflation. Many Caribbean economies import a large portion of food and other goods from other countries. Increase in world prices will result in domestic prices of these imported goods to rise. So the Caribbean economies, they tend to import a lot of their material that they use for production, whether it's capital, oil, or raw material. Now, if there's a rise in world prices for these factors, it will also contribute to imported inflation because these rise in prices are passed on to the consumer. So this element of imported inflation contributes to cost push inflation. So let us recap. We looked at the definition of inflation, which is a steady and continuous rise in the general price level in the economy. We also looked at the types or causes of inflation. These were demand pull inflation, cost push inflation, liquidity or increase in money supply, and imported inflation. See you. Hang around for part 2.